The people who have lived the longest on Earth consume a particular vegetable every day. This fruit is warty, bumpy, and extremely bitter. It contains chemicals that are so close to insulin that scientists refer to one of them as polypeptide P, or plant insulin. The same enzyme pathway that billion-dollar diabetes medications target is activated by it. Centenarians have been consuming it for generations in Okinawa, Japan. Since 1975, the Okinawa Centenarian research, the world's longest-running research of very old individuals, has been recording their diets. Additionally, this vegetable continues to show up on their platters. However, in the US, the FDA has the authority to label a product as an unapproved medicine if someone writes the phrase "prevents diabetes" on a container of this vegetable or its supplements. The label turns into a crime scene. It's not just about one vegetable. It concerns who is in charge of the words on the label music, and why the most well-studied traditional cuisine on the planet is still unable to explain its effects. Greetings from Buried Garden. The first crime scene is the label on the package, so please subscribe and share. One of the most ambitious longevity experiments ever carried out was unlocked in 1975. The Okinawa Centenarian study was founded on Japan's southern islands by Dr. Makoto Suzuki and others. Their goal was straightforward yet unheard of. Keep a record of every detail regarding individuals who survive past the age of 100. Hard data gathered over decades, not mythology or stories. In addition to hundreds of elderly people in their 70s, 80s, and 90s, that study has now looked at over 1,000 centenarians. It has grown to be the world's longest-running population-based research of extraordinarily old people. And the revelations from the archive are astounding. There are about 68 centenarians for every 100,000 people in Okinawa. Compared to similar American populations, such concentration is more than 3 times higher. The mortality rate from heart disease is about 3 times lower among Okinawan men than in Americans. It is 4 times lower in women. Music. Everything was cataloged by the researchers. Genetic markers, social structures, psychological practices, and exercise habits all demanded attention, but the diet persisted. According to the research, the typical Okinawan plate consists of 60% vegetables, sweet potatoes, leafy greens, and one specific fruit. It is specifically listed in the study as one of the often consumed things that serve as both traditional remedies and cuisines. They refer to it as Goya. This is Memoriala Carrancha bitter melon. The fruit's distinctive bright green skin is covered in ridges and lumps, resembling a warty cucumber that wouldn't cooperate. Because the flesh inside is so bitter, societies all across the world have created complex methods to make it digestible. They blanch it. They season it with salt. To counteract that abrasive taste, they combine it with powerful flavors. This is not an accidental flavor. Civilizations have chosen to maintain this taste. Goya champuru is recognized as a staple of Okinawan regional cuisine by Japan's Ministry of Agriculture, Forestry, and Fisheries. It's an easy dish. Stir-fried bitter melon with egg, tofu, pork, and music. It is high in heat-resistant vitamin C, which helps avoid summer weariness, according to the government. It is heat-resistant, which means that even after cooking, its nutritional content is maintained. It is now year-round in Okinawa, because to improve cultivation, it was not a seasonal food for the centenarians. They were continuously consuming it. However, Okinawa is not by itself. Music. Watch the pins grow as you pull back the map. It is referred to as Kela in Bangladesh, Pakistan, and India. It is known as ampalaya in the Philippines. It's sarasay in Jamaica and the Caribbean. It's called kugwa in China. Music, it's pere in Indonesia. The same species, but various names and preparations. Music. This plant is remembered by half of the world. It has been cooked, preserved, and passed down through the generations in half of the world. The question is not why Okinawans consume bitter melon, despite the fact that Western agriculture mostly disregarded it. Why Americans don't is the question. The story becomes unavoidable at this point. So let's open the laboratory door. There are at least 3 chemical classes in bitter melon that have been shown to have blood sugar action. The first is carotene, a combination of steroidal saponins that has been demonstrated to function similarly to insulin. It enhances hepatic glycogen production, decreases gluconeogenesis in the liver, and increases insulin release. Polypeptide P, also known as P-insulin or V-insulin, is the second. When administered subcutaneously, this insulin-like hypoglycemic protein decreases blood glucose levels in both humans and animals. Because it mimics plant insulin, scientists gave it that name. Serious research institutions were interested in the third class. A study that was published in PLOS in April 2013 altered the discourse. An amazing discovery was made by researchers from the Shanghai Institute of Materia Medica at the Chinese Academy of Sciences, RMY Mati University in Melbourne, and the Garvan Institute of Medical Research in Sydney. In lab models, bitter melon-derived triploids enhance and activate GLUT for translocation to the plasma membrane. The glucose transporter GLUT4 is responsible for transferring blood sugar into muscle and fat cells. Enhanced glucose disposal and insulin-resistant models result from enhanced GLUT function, which lowers blood sugar. This is why it is important. One of the most researched therapeutic targets in the study of metabolic diseases is AMPK. The most widely given medication for diabetes, metformin, partially acts by activating AMK. Pharmaceutical companies attempt to target this one channel with billions of dollars. Additionally, the same enzyme is activated by an Okinawan stir-fried vegetable. The regulatory system does not rejoice when a meal begins to interact with the same molecular pathways that pharmaceutical corporations spend millions of dollars attempting to control. It awakens. Let's look at the precise contents of 100 g of raw bitter melon. That serving contains 88 milligrams of vitamin C, according to the USDA Food Data Central Database. That represents between 98 and 140% of the daily value from a single modest portion. There are barely 17 to 20 calories. It contains 72 micrograms of folate per 100 grams, or about 18% of the daily recommended amount. Iron, zinc, potassium, and B vitamins are all present. This isn't theoretical supplement amounts. This is plate-sized nourishment. For decades, the Okinawan centenarians incorporated this into their diet, eating it multiple times a week. If the nutrition label is this simple, why does the discussion become restricted when it comes to how that nutrition affects illness? Due to the fact that there is clinical proof, which poses an issue. Results from a 4-week, multi-center, randomized double-blind active control trial were presented in a 2011 study that was published in the Journal of Ethnopharmacology. Bitter melon, 500 milligrams, 1,000 milligrams, or 2,000 milligrams daily, or metformin, 1,000 milligrams daily, were randomly assigned to 129 newly diagnosed type 2 diabetic patients. There were notable sugar decreases in both the bitter melon 2,000 milligrams group and the metformin group. The warning is crucial. Metformin has a greater hypoglycemic effect than bitter melon. It did not demonstrate superiority, but it did demonstrate a slight effect. Another study that looked at pre-diabetic patients in Korea over a 1 to 2 week period was published in the Journal of Ethnopharmacology in 2023. 30 minutes after consuming glucose, the bitter melon extract group's glucose levels were lower, and 120 minutes after oral glucose tolerance testing, their glucagon levels were much lower. Suppression of glucagon levels seemed to be the mechanism for decreasing glucose. Here's the reality check, though. According to a 2023 systematic review and meta-analysis that was published in Frontiers in Nutrition, there is insufficient clinical data to assess Mamortica carantia's metabolic impact. The findings of the clinical trials are inconsistent. Animal studies frequently use doses that are many times higher than those used in human trials. Approved therapy does not equate to promising mechanisms. Traditional foods are imprisoned in this regulatory purgatory. Not enough agreement to approve, too much evidence to disregard. The clinical history is inconsistent, sufficient indication to continue learning. FDA-style disease claims lack sufficient assurance. Goya is said to be their penicillin among Okinawan elders. It's colloquial for a cure that seems to work for everything. However, laboratory evidence is necessary for antibacterial claims, and human relevance is necessary for laboratory evidence. Mamortica carantia extracts have been shown in numerous peer-reviewed studies to have antimicrobial action in vitro, including activity against Salmonella typhi, Candida albicans, E. coli, and Staphylococcus aureus. Depending on the extract and the pathogen, the minimum inhibitory doses varied from 0.08 to 3 milligrams per milliliter. However, inhibition in a petri dish is not the same as treating human illnesses. The breadth of unconducted clinical trials is the difference between treating an ailment in humans and suppressing germs in a lab. You get a spark from the lab. You are not permitted to call it fire, according to the law. We have now reached the trapdoor. Foods are not promoted by the FDA. Their goal is not to do that. Their goals are to safeguard the general public's health and control product categories and food labeling. They do not recommend any particular plants for music therapies. What can and cannot be claimed is enforced by them. The Dietary Supplement Health and Education Act of 1994, or DHA, is the primary legal framework. The current regulatory system that controls what you read on supplement bottles was developed by DSHEA. There are two types of claims under this paradigm. Claims about structure and function are permitted. On your product, you can indicate that it promotes a healthy metabolism of glucose. Unapproved disease claims are prohibited. You are unable to write that music lowers the risk of diabetes or prevents diabetes. A disclaimer is required for statements pertaining to structure and function. The Food and Drug Administration has not reviewed this claim. No condition is meant to be diagnosed, treated, cured, or prevented by this product. That disclaimer is something you have seen dozens of times. You now understand its purpose. The bar is significantly higher for foods. Food health claims must be approved by the FDA through substantial scientific consensus. This entails submitting a plethora of human clinical evidence, not conventional use, not mechanistic studies, but clinical proof to the FDA. Since 1990, the FDA has only approved roughly 12 health claims, 12 inches more than 30 years. Corruption is not the obstacle. The categorization system itself is the obstacle. Music. The market for dietary supplements in the US is projected to reach $68.74 billion by 2025. High-stakes language is natural blood sugar support. A product enters a regulatory maze when it goes from being said to promote a healthy metabolism to being said to prevent diabetes. Furthermore, the gatekeepers are not scientists. They are attorneys analyzing the structure of sentences. Goya can be sold as a vegetable, completely lawful. They are able to market it as a supplement, completely lawful. They may claim that it promotes a healthy metabolism. With a disclaimer, that is lawful. Without verification of medicine level, they cannot claim to treat diabetes. FDA review, approval, and clinical trials. The plant remained unchanged. It was the sentence structure. The antagonist is not a human being. A set of classifications and definitions is the antagonist. Food, medication, and supplement. What can be lawfully said about what you consume is determined by 3 words: music. The body of science continues to grow. The conventional wisdom continues to prove itself. And as there is no other legal choice, the label remains mute. How do you apply this knowledge then? First, acknowledge it. Goya champuru features Goya, a rough green bitter melon used in Okinawan cooking. Farmers markets, Asian grocery stores, and increasingly mainstream supermarkets carry it. Seek out examples that are firm, bright green, and free of yellowing. Yellowing indicates overripeness, which typically translates into increased bitterness. Keep it as proof rather than as a miracle. When stored properly, bitter melon can last 4 to 5 days in the refrigerator. Centenarians actually consumed the entire fruit rather than processed additives. Recognize the warnings if you are tempted to switch from food to medication. Cancer Center's patient education materials highlight the lack of human data on blood sugar reduction, potential problems during pregnancy, additive effects with insulin and other diabetes treatments, and visine from seeds are among the safety concerns. If you use blood sugar medicine, you should always speak with your doctor. Close the circle and comprehend the true lessons Okinawa imparts. There isn't just one magical plant if the lesson is true. It is a culinary pattern music that has been consumed for decades as part of a way of life that involves everyday mobility, social interaction through moi, and a feeling of direction through iki. Instead of starting with the pill, start with the pan. Goya was not prohibited. The science was not suppressed. They used definitions to cage it into silence. A food cannot inform you how it affects illness, because once it does, it turns into a medicine. Additionally, veggies were never intended to give the proof that pharmaceuticals need. You now know the location of the trapur. You are not being misled by the label. Music. Simply put, it is not permitted to be honest with you. Give this video to someone who needs to understand the distinction between what the label is permitted to say and what science says about music. Get Buried Garden as a subscription. The wisdom that has been buried is not in the earth. The fine print contains it.